A Quiet Neighborhood Shattered: The Murder of Brian Thompson by those Luigi Mangione. It was a quiet neighborhood, the kind where everyone knows everyone and disturbances are rare. But on the evening of October 14th, 2018, that peace was shattered. Brian Thompson, a 29-year-old fitness trainer, was found brutally murdered in his home. The crime sent shockwaves through the community and left investigators scrambling for answers. Within days, a suspect emerged: Luigi Mangione, a 47-year-old technician who lived just 2 houses away. At first glance, Luigi seemed like the unlikeliest perpetrator. He had no criminal record, no history of violence, and was known for keeping to himself. So, how did this quiet, unassuming man become the prime suspect in one of the most shocking crimes the neighborhood had ever seen? To understand the story, we need to delve into the lives of both Brian Thompson and Luigi Mangione. Who were these men, and how did their paths cross in such a tragic way? Brian, the outgoing fitness trainer with a reputation for living on the edge, and Luigi, the quiet technician who avoided conflict at all costs, seemed to have little in common. Yet, their interactions carried an undercurrent of tension that built over time. What were the events and circumstances that turned this seemingly mundane, neighborly relationship into the backdrop of a chilling murder? Brian Thompson was outgoing, ambitious, and had a reputation for being the life of the party. He thrived in social settings and was well known for hosting gatherings at his home. But behind the charm, Brian struggled with personal demons. He had developed a gambling problem that led him into significant debt, creating friction with people who were less forgiving than friends or neighbors. Some acquaintances described him as someone who could charm his way out of trouble, but as his debts grew, so did the risks he faced. Arguments with dangerous individuals weren't uncommon, painting a complex picture of a man whose outward confidence masked inner turmoil. Luigi Mangione, on the other hand, seemed to live an entirely different kind of life. Born in a small town in Italy, Luigi grew up valuing hard work and simplicity. When he moved to the UK in the 1990s, he sought stability and built a quiet life as a maintenance technician. Luigi was not one to draw attention. He avoided gossip, rarely attended community events, and preferred spending his evenings working on small repairs in his garage. While many in the neighborhood respected his reserved nature, others found it unsettling, even misinterpreting his silence as coldness. Was this quiet demeanor the mark of a man capable of murder, or was it simply misunderstood? The two men were not close, but they shared one thing in common: tension. Luigi had reportedly complained about Brian's loud parties and erratic behavior. Brian, in turn, had accused Luigi of being overly controlling and unfriendly. Though their conflicts were minor at first, the tension simmered until it finally boiled over in the weeks leading up to Brian's death. On the night of October 14th, Luigi Mangione claimed he was working in his garage, fixing an old appliance. At the same time, Brian Thompson was at home, entertaining a guest. Witnesses later said they heard raised voices from Brian's house around 10 p.m., followed by a loud crash. The next morning, a close friend of Brian's found his body. He had been stabbed multiple times with a kitchen knife, which was left at the scene. Luigi Mangione's fingerprints were discovered on the knife, and the text found on Brian's phone told a troubling story. Just days before the murder, Luigi had sent Brian a series of threatening messages. The content of those texts was damning. "I've had enough of you." One message read, "You're going to regret this." Within 48 hours, police arrested Luigi Mangione and charged him with the murder of Brian Thompson. The case seemed open and shut. Luigi's fingerprints were on the weapon. The threatening text pointed to a motive, and witnesses confirmed there had been arguments between the two. But as the trial began, cracks started to appear in the narrative. Luigi's defense team argued that the evidence against him was circumstantial at best. They pointed out that Luigi had no history of violence, and that his fingerprints on the knife could have been from an innocent interaction. After all, it was a common kitchen utensil that could have easily been handled during a neighborhood gathering or at Brian's home on an earlier occasion. Then, there was the matter of Luigi's alibi. Several neighbors testified that they had seen him working in his garage at the time the murder was believed to have occurred. This alibi complicated the timeline. If Luigi was in his garage, how could he have committed the crime just a few houses away? Even more unsettling were the inconsistencies in the forensic evidence. While Luigi's fingerprints were on the knife, there were no traces of blood found in his home, his clothes, or even his garage. How could someone carry out such a brutal murder without leaving a trail? The prosecution, however, remained firm. They argued that Luigi had motive, means, and opportunity. The loud arguments, the threatening messages, and the fingerprints on the weapon were enough to convince the jury that his culpability. They pointed out that Luigi had no history of violence, and that his fingerprints on the knife could have been from an innocent interaction. After all, it was a common kitchen utensil that could have easily been handled during a neighborhood gathering or at Brian's home on an earlier occasion. Then, there was the matter of Luigi's alibi. Several neighbors testified that they had seen him working in his garage at the time the murder was believed to have occurred. This alibi complicated the timeline. If Luigi was in his garage, how could he have committed the crime just a few houses away? Then came the revelations about Brian's other conflicts. Testimonies from friends and acquaintances painted a picture of a man who had crossed the wrong people. Brian had owed large sums of money to multiple individuals, some of whom had been known to use violence to settle their disputes. In 2021, an independent investigation uncovered documents suggesting that Brian had been receiving anonymous threats in the weeks leading up to his death. These threats were eerily similar to the messages attributed to Luigi, but came from an untraceable source. This discovery led many to question whether Luigi had been framed. Could someone have planted his fingerprints on the weapon to divert attention from the real killer? And if so, who would go to such lengths to see Luigi Mangione take the fall? The case of Luigi Mangione and Brian Thompson is more than just a tragic story of murder. It's a stark reminder of the complexities of justice. Was Luigi truly guilty, or was he an easy scapegoat for a crime rooted in deeper, darker motives? Luigi Mangione was guilty. On November 12, 2019, Luigi Mangione was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. But the story doesn't end there. In the years following the trial, questions began to surface. Forensic experts who reviewed the case raised concerns about the handling of the evidence. One of the most glaring issues was the lack of physical evidence linking Luigi directly to the crime scene. Beyond the fingerprints on the knife, there was little to place him in Brian's home at the time of the murder. As we look back on this case, one thing is clear. The truth is still shrouded in mystery. What happened that night in October 2018? And will we ever truly know who killed Brian Thompson? The case raises a final, unsettling question. If an innocent man can end up behind bars, what does that say about the justice system we rely on? If you want to dive deeper into mysterious cases like this one, make sure to visit the Central Sites, your hub for unraveling unsolved crimes and exploring the darkest corners of human nature. The case of Luigi Mangione and Brian Thompson leaves us with more questions than answers. Who had the most to gain from Brian's death, and why were the threats he received before the murder not fully investigated? Could Luigi have been the perfect scapegoat, a quiet man with just enough tension in his past to cast suspicion on him? The justice system relies on facts and evidence, but this case reminds us that those elements can sometimes be manipulated, misunderstood, or even ignored. This story isn't just about one man's guilt or innocence. It's about the fragility of the truth. How many other cases have ended with the wrong person behind bars? And how can we ensure that justice truly serves its purpose? Brian Thompson's life, marked by conflicts and hidden struggles, adds a layer of complexity to this case. His charm and ambition drew people to him, but his darker dealings pushed some away. Could those dealings have led to his death, orchestrated by someone with more motive than Luigi Mangione ever had? The anonymous threats Brian received before his murder suggest there were others in his life who wished him harm. Yet, the trial focused almost entirely on Luigi, leaving these loose threads dangling in the wind. What does this say about the priorities of the investigation? And more importantly, does it mean the real killer could still be out there? Luigi Mangione's conviction highlights the power of circumstantial evidence in shaping a jury's perception. Fingerprints on a knife, text messages, and past arguments formed the backbone of the case against him. But what about the missing blood evidence? The conflicting timelines? The lack of a clear motive beyond neighborhood disputes? For Luigi, these inconsistencies are more than just technicalities. They represent a fight for his freedom and a plea for his side of the story to be truly heard. This case forces us to question the very systems we trust to deliver justice. How thorough are our investigations? And how many innocent people have faced similar fates? As we look back on this case, one thing is clear: the truth is still shrouded in mystery. What happened that night in October 2018? And will we ever truly know who killed Brian Thompson? The case raises a final, unsettling question. If an innocent man can end up behind bars, what does that say about the justice system we rely on? If you want to dive deeper into mysterious cases like this one, make sure to visit the Central Sites, your hub for unraveling unsolved crimes and exploring the darkest corners of human nature. Follow us on all our platforms for exclusive updates, behind-the-scenes details, and a chance to discuss your theories with others. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss another deep dive. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep questioning, keep searching, and keep exploring the unknown.